The unexpected power of Moff Gideon's command cruiser, secrets of the Dark Troopers and a perhaps connection with Grand Admiral Thrawn, and an interesting detail in the new Stormtrooper dropship. All of that and more on today's Star Wars video. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars The Mandalorian video. I wanted to do a kind of wrap up on a few topics that I didn't feel like had enough content for a video on their own, although if you guys disagree and there's something you'd like expanded on that I touch on in this video, let me know down in the chat. So I'm not sure which one of these I'll build the title of my video around, but if you want to skip ahead, I will include timestamps down below. You can scroll over the bar on YouTube or go down in the description to pick out which portion you'd like to see in particular, or just watch the whole video. It's going to be a fun time. Of course, today's video has spoilers for The Mandalorian, but with that being said, let's get started. So, the first thing I wanted to talk about comes from the recent episode of The Mandalorian that, of course, is Chapter 14, The Tragedy. And I guess the tragedy here is meant to refer to the destruction of the Razor Crest, the Mandalorian's noble steed, rather than the kidnapping of Grogu, because I think we all know Grogu's coming back, but it was funny to see people just freak out when they saw the title. But anyway, the first thing I wanted to talk about was the presence of the very, very unique Stormtrooper dropships that we see in this episode. This is something that I noticed but neglected to mention during my episode breakdown, but the interesting thing about these transports is they're very, very similar to the First Order landers that we saw in that iconic scene from The Force Awakens. Let's look at the similarities before we talk about why it's important. First of all, aesthetically, this is a pretty radical design from other, at least Galactic Civil War era Imperial technology. We often will see landers with wings and drop-down hatches. Lots of the Imperial tech is either clearly an offshoot of something Republic-based or a variation of existing Imperial technology, like the TIE Reaper, which is basically a TIE fighter style ship modified for troop deployment, or the Sentinel shuttle, which is kind of like a larger Lambda. Gideon's dropship, however, is clearly something distinct. It evokes the World War II landers, just like the First Order shuttle. It has the same general design principles of the First Order shuttle. It's basically a heavy armored box, or as we see at the end of the episode, a coffin, and once it lands, it disgorges troops from a front ramp. It's stretching, but if you imagine, you can also see details which look like the First Order lander is a successor to this. For example, the general profile remains the same as we mentioned, but there's also the headlights on the front, which are basically in the same place where the engine intakes are on the Imperial shuttle. You can see what looks like slimmer and more narrow vents on the First Order shuttle, and both ships also have a set of quad engines which burn blue. So I think it's probably intended that these ships are a precursor to the First Order. Why is that important? Well, it depends on how closely you think the Empire and the First Order work together. This could indicate simply that this is an in-between ship and is a nice precursor and nothing more. Or given the fact that this is a novel form of troop transport, this could be some new technology that Gideon has access to, indicating his connection to the greater Empire as a whole. Now, this is something before the season that I 100% did not think would happen, but given the presence of Death Troopers and a possible connection to Thrawn, both of which we'll talk about soon, I am definitely less confident about that, and I'm 100% willing to say that I may have been wrong. Either way, it was a nice nod, and I do think I like Gideon's transports a little bit more. They still have that distinctive World War II lander shape, but I think the winged engines sort of give it a bit more of an appropriate Star Wars look to it. Just my opinion, though. Alright, so the next thing I want to talk about is Moff Gideon's flagship, something that looks quite similar to an Architan's class cruiser or an old Republic command cruiser, but also is not. Let's talk about this, and again, we'll look at the evidence for the difference, then at the end, we'll mention why it matters. So, there are some major differences between Gideon's light cruiser, and maybe that's why they're not referring to it as an Architan's. And I've got to give credit to ScoutTheTrooper on Twitter, who's been really talking about this a lot, and who I relied on for a lot of this information, so I'll make sure to link to his Twitter down in the description. He's also a nice guy who's put up with some of my bullshit in the past, but anyway. During the siege, we of course see the bridge of the command cruiser Precursor, and it looks nothing like the bridge of Architens we've seen in the past. It's much, much larger, much more expansive, and if you actually look at the model from the outside, you can see this represented quite well. From the outside, we can see that the two large turbo laser turrets are also a slightly different design, indicating, like we got with the transports, that this is probably a different model of ship. But of course, the changes continue here because Gideon's Architens, or his light cruiser, command cruiser, whatever, also is equipped with a hangar bay. We see the Dark Troopers launched from there. I'm also going to assume that it's large enough to field TIE fighters and whatever else. But additionally, there was also some art from the Topps trading cards line that was leaked, which shows TIE fighters seemingly launching from a small hangar bay within the prongs. So this is a much more capable ship, I would wager, than an ordinary Architens, and I think probably more appropriate for command duty, especially for someone like Moff Gideon, although really a Star Destroyer or something like that would probably be better for someone of his importance. In the past, Imperial Architens didn't have an actual hangar between their prongs, but could dock ships, whether that's TIE fighters or shuttles, but this could be something different. Continuing though into the softer science, Scout also took an estimate of the size of the Architens, and he thinks that it's larger than the ordinary ship, and you know what? I agree. Here's his math. So he took the height of Giancarlo Esposito, who of course plays Moff Gideon, 5'9". He added an inch for the heels. He estimated the size of the Dark Trooper at about 7 feet. Then he compared that to the size of the underbelly hangar and used that to find the size of the overall ship. Now, while that does remind me of the classic MC-80 hangar measurements from Return of the Jedi, his length of about 460 meters does feel right to me. This definitely does not feel like the standard size Architens, which is 350, because of the two hangars, or at least one set of hangar bays, and the significantly larger command deck. Perhaps because of its larger size, Gideon's command cruiser also has 4 smaller secondary engines. So, as we said, this could just be a offshoot of the standard ship, or this could indicate that the First Order or the Empire is progressing on the original designs and that Moff Gideon is connected to something larger. So the final thing I wanted to mention is a pretty short one, but it relates to a theory that I've had for a while, which is that Moff Gideon could very well be working directly with Grand Admiral Thrawn. I've done an entire video, which I'll link in the upper right hand corner, but to summarize my points, Moff Gideon's actor makes reference to the fact that he does have someone that he's working with, and probably for, someone with a great source of intelligence across the galaxy. Grand Admiral Thrawn, we know, is trying to build up forces, given his use of the Magistrate, who we know is great at clearing and stripping planets, and both factions have been closely associated with Beskar. But something I didn't really think about is the fact that although we haven't actually had Dark Troopers up until this point, we've had something similar. Specifically in Star Wars Rebels, we see Thrawn associated with the DT series sentry droids. He used them to guard the ship, and he also spars with them. Now, DT series sentry droid, the DT there, could easily refer to Dark Trooper, and these look very similar, almost like a prototype, clunkier version of what we got as full Dark Troopers, or at least some phase of Dark Troopers in The Mandalorian now. So it's possible that the Dark Trooper project has been something Thrawn's been working on for some time. Maybe Thrawn reached out to Gideon because he had a supply of Beskar from the Mandalorian sieges, or because he was one of the last remaining Imperial officials or Moffs in that sector of the galaxy, and he had some resources. Who knows, but I think it's an interesting connection that I think a lot of people mentioned and people talked about, at least the difference between the Dark Trooper-like droids from Rebels and what we got now, but I never really thought through the entire implications until now. But those are just a few things I wanted to bring to your attention. Let me know what you guys thought. Is there one of these topics that you find most interesting? Is there anything else you'd like to know? Is there more about The Mandalorian you'd like me to cover before next episode? Please let me know all that and more down in the comments. By the way, last night I got to play Star Wars Squadrons with Sam Witwer, Ian Fraser, who's the creator of the game, Jay, who's known as Charlemagne and the community director for Star Wars Squadrons, and Alex from Star Wars Explained. If you're interested, I'll include a link to that video down below. Until next time though guys, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.